Therapists of Reddit, what made you realize you were treating a sociopath? They came into the hospital after making a suicide pact with someone and didn't follow through with it, and the other person completed, acted really broken up, and said they felt guilty about it and seemed genuine. It was all an act. Later on during the inpatient stay they made another suicide pact with another patient who then told us about it and said the sociopath was pushing them to come up with a plan and pick a date to do it. Apparently they had done this with like 3 other people, and getting admitted to psych units was their way of finding vulnerable people to target. Legal charges were being pursued, but it was questionable at the time they were admitted whether they would be held responsible or not. This was part of the reason for the admission. The person said they were suicidal because they might be charged with manslaughter for the person that completed, and the treatment team was in contact with the police several times, especially after we found out they were targeting people on the unit. Ultimately, I think we discharged them to the care of a family member after pursuing court-ordered treatment, and I do not know if they ever ended up getting charged or not, although I sure fucking hope they did. Encouraging vulnerable people to complete suicide is just as bad as murder in my mind. The 3 other times it happened the people did not end up completing, and we only found out about them after the fact from collateral from family members. The furthest it went was they made plans with a person from New York to drive to meet each other and complete together in like Ohio or something. Then the friend one happened and they got in trouble and got admitted to our unit 4C. They were actually discharged the first admission and we all felt so bad for the person. We just thought they made a pact and backed out and were being targeted by law enforcement. I worked with the individual and group, but did not have them on my individual caseload, and my initial impression was that of a decent person who had been through some really tough times, but was engaged with services and fairly intelligent/charming. One of my colleagues is a forensic psychologist, and she had them on her individual caseload, and even she was suckered by them. It blew all of our minds when we heard they were trying to get someone else to make a pact on the unit. Not a therapist, school psychologist. When talking to a student, he casually mentions how he keeps his parents in line by threatening to call ICE to have his mother, undocumented, deported. He doesn't care about his family in the least, and they have zero control over him. His 2 siblings are typically developed and are terrified of him. I work in a residential substance abuse program. I don't take offense to most clients' behaviors. They were in the midst of their addiction and they are trying to get better for any number of motivators: self-referral, family, probation/parole mandated, etc. I've worked with convicted murderers whom were remorseful and great to work with, so whatever, let's do some work together. But I'll speak of one person whom I believe to have antisocial personality disorder. After approximately 30 minutes talking to him during intake, I could tell how well he might be able to manipulate those he believes are dumber than him, and he stated as much. He mimicked my language, posture, he spoke eloquently, and was charismatic as all hell. But something was just off. I take note and move on. Needed more data. And as he continued in the program it became apparent. Everything was someone or something else's fault. Failed relationships, his addiction and particular drugs of choice, his inability to hold jobs, no accountability or responsibility. He even blamed his brother for getting upset that he, my client, stabbed his brother. After my client had stolen his brother's car in the dead of night and drove it in a ditch and abandoned it, then he lied about it and stabbed his brother for being annoying. He manipulated other clients and staff, and was damn good at it, except for a few of us who would call him out in group sessions, or through behavioral contracts. He was my individual client, and during a session, I was challenging him, because there were inconsistencies in something he shared. Then he finally came clean. He is HIV+, I was aware of this. He contracted HIV by cheating on his partner, or sharing a needle. He and the person he cheated with shared needles. He had discovered he was HIV+ prior to his partner's return, as they were gone for an extended period of months. He got on treatment, and then didn't tell them at all. Still hadn't at the time I stopped working with him, and I believe they are still together. Additionally, he shared that he drugged this partner, whom had a family history of meth abuse, and had never used as much as a joint, for his own sexual pleasure, multiple times, sober and high. The partner would have severe anxiety attacks after sex acts, which he convinced them they were, and they believed him. You could see his whole fucking body light up in relaying these acts. He laughed and stated that he couldn't believe that they believed and trusted him. A complete disregard for others. This wasn't the only thing he shared that made me want to hang a warning sign around the guy. He completed treatment by going through the motions and is now out in the community. He is young. I have a strong feeling that at some point he will move to even more malicious acts, and I wouldn't be surprised if he kills someone in the future. This isn't exactly what you were asking, but a relative of mine was given an unofficial diagnosis of ASP when she was younger. At the time, the doctors told her family that they didn't like to officially diagnose someone that was under 18. As a child, she was extremely manipulative and could go from acting very normal to being stone cold in the space of a moment. Her parents forced her to go to therapy, but as soon as she became an adult, she stopped. Her life now, as an adult, is pretty normal. She is still extremely manipulative, but is also better at hiding it, so she comes off as charming. She works a normal job, though she usually changes jobs by her own decision every year or two. Her boyfriends seem to only last as long as they are useful for whatever reason. I don't think she really has friends though. I was counseling a student. The student was female, 15, smart, had a good amount of friends, and liked cutesy things. Here's some things she said to me that made me suspect something was really wrong with her. Keep in mind that I have no qualifications to diagnose someone. I just think she's abnormal. Was dating a boy. Told me she had no feelings for him, but was dating him because he was useful and did things for her. She did nothing in return for him, and he was very sad about it. When I asked her if she felt bad for making him sad, she told me, no. If I make him sad, that's his problem. Why do I have to care about his feelings? I can't feel what he feels. It doesn't affect me. When I asked her if she felt guilty for using him, she said, no, he started hanging around me because he likes me. If he likes me, then he should make himself useful to me. What else is he good for? She had no concept of romantic affection, but that may have been excusable for a 15-year-old depending on maturity. She told me her friend's dog had died, and she pretended to care because that's what she was supposed to do, but it was her friend's problem and she didn't understand why she was supposed to feel anything about the situation. She told me that one of her teachers had told her friend to stay away from her because the teacher noticed that her facial expressions often seemed faked and forced. She did not understand why this was an issue and asked me, doesn't everyone fake emotional reactions? Like if someone tells a joke, don't you pretend to laugh? Or if someone tells you someone died, don't you pretend to feel sorry for them? She asked me to explain to her what genuine emotion felt like and what empathy felt like. After both explanations, she was completely confused and told me that she had no idea what I was describing and had never even suspected that everyone around her wasn't faking emotion and empathy just like she was. She left the conversation convinced that she was normal and everyone else was just weird. Psychologist who works in a correctional setting here. Yes, I agree with the people who commented regarding DSM-5 criteria for ASP. I've seen a lot of those. In regard to personal experience, the people that make my stomach turn are the unrepentant sex offenders. I think many sex offenders suffer from a treatable, albeit gross, disease. But I've met many who try to justify what they did. It happened to me, rationalize it. It's legal in other countries and flat out blame the victim. Parents should have taught him/her better. I won't debate these people and I typically redirect, since there's not getting through to people like that. I also learn I've worked with a sociopath when I figure out I got hoodwinked after the fact. Like an inmate has left my office and I think, oh what a nice guy, and find out what he's really like from other inmates or staff. I've been a licensed therapist for going on 3 years now, but I've been seeing clients with an intern license for about 5 years. The vast majority of my clients have been on probation or parole and have had a wide range of mental illnesses, including antisocial personality disorder, ASP. My mentor described folks with ASP like this: it's in the eyes. They've got shark eyes, cold and predatory, like they are staring right through you, looking for your weaknesses to exploit. And, having worked with several people with that diagnosis and adolescent precursor conduct disorder, it's pretty damn accurate. People with ASP are some of the most manipulative people around, and many of them enjoy it. Manipulating people is almost a game to them, well, a mini game to indulge in, while they work on whatever else they are planning, even if it's as simple as present as normal. And, let me tell you, they are good at it. It's incredibly difficult to outplay someone with the diagnosis at their own game, because they've been playing it their entire lives. Since my clientele are court ordered, most of the manipulation revolves around trying to cover up whatever else they are doing. Abusing their domestic partner, abusing substances, etc. Some are more impulsive than others with the diagnosis, but they all have the shark eyes. Not a therapist, but I did a lot of work with young guys as a mentor in my military career. Had a guy who wanted to talk to chaps. I asked him why. He then went into graphic detail about how he had been raping women. The kicker was he wasn't going in to confess, or because he felt guilty. He wanted chaps to get him into the sick clinic, because that was where his girlfriend was. My dad's a, now semi-retired, psychologist. Back in the 90s, he was working as the director of psychology for a large housing and treatment facility for the severely mentally disabled. He wanted to get into doing some therapy sessions for non-disabled folks on the side, just to mix things up and stretch his professional wings a little. Our house had a home office wing with a separate entrance, so he decided to start seeing a few patients on the weekends. This plan lasted about 3 weeks before he realized that he'd made a terrible mistake. One of his patients, a very large gentleman, began visibly melting down during a session, pacing around the office and acting increasingly erratic. My dad's thoughts turned to the fact that his wife and 3 kids were now in the same house with a big dude who was clearly unstable. He slowly positioned himself by the door in case the guy tried to bolt for it. The guy noticed this, pulled out a gun, and said, "Don't worry, if I wanted to hurt you or myself, I would have already used this by now." My dad utilized the same skills that he knew from working with violent patients at his main job to talk the guy into putting the gun away. He escorted him from the premises and never saw another patient at home again. My mom was pissed. Psych nurse here. Patient I gained a lot of trust with told me about this person he and 2 others tortured almost to death. I knew the case because it made the news. He went to jail for it. Went into details about the torture. It included making hundreds of cuts to the person's body and giving them an acidic bath. Anyways, his story is that this person raped the neighborhood girl with Down syndrome, and it was a payback. This guy was in our ward for about a month, continually threatening suicide if he was discharged. After weeks of knowing him and gaining some form of trust with me, he ended up admitting to me that he had made up the lie about the rape because he simply didn't like this guy because of an argument, probably drug related, years back. TL. Doctor patient lied about a rape so he could convince his friends to abduct and torture a man that he had some petty disagreement. Thing is, he stood trial as a minor and threw his mates under the his, claiming they were the instigators and he simply went along with it. They are still in jail.